welcome back to Chosen. We are so excited to be here with you for another great week.
I'm Micah, and this is Kylie, and we are here for your weekly reminder to really be engaging in your group. We're over halfway through our series, and it's time to be thinking about long-term plans for your group. The deeper you choose to go now with these people, the better it could be if or when your group chooses to continue meeting long-term.
Yeah, one of the things that I've really found that will bring a group of people together is serving. And this week we are focusing on what it looks like to love your neighbor and serve them well.
That's right. And as we start the fourth week of our daily devotionals, we are encouraging everyone to lean into the Matthew 25 challenge. I think if we really engage with the Matthew 25 challenge, it could be really transformative. So as you watch this story and message, start thinking about your neighbors, start thinking about the people around you that need to be loved, that need to be served.
Yeah, so let's jump into week 4's story and message with Patrice.
So I was born in the Central African Republic and born in a village. My dad was serving as a pastor at the time. It was a village, everything that you would imagine Africa to be, Central Africa in the rainforest in the Congo. And it's a country that had just gone through a major civil war. As you can imagine, it was a pretty difficult place to live. But oftentimes that meant that maybe we were in environments that didn't provide the best opportunities or the best education for me and my siblings. And so our parents always had this desire to provide the best opportunities for us, which meant that at some point, as we got older, they would have to most likely send us off somewhere. In 2006, 2007, around that time, there was a group of missionaries that came to my dad's seminary where I grew up. And they got to know me and my brother, so we got to talking, and they said, well, what do you guys think about coming to the United States to go to school with us and our kids? And I remember at age 16, I'll never forget that moment when it was time for me to move away from home. I remember having just my suitcase, and I think I had like $150 in my pocket, and literally saying goodbye to my mom and dad, hopping on a plane, moving to a different continent, to a whole new place, in a different culture, different environment, different language, different everything than what I had grown up with my whole life. It led to a lot of challenges throughout just that whole process of moving away. Showing up and being the new kid at school, and everybody already has been together most of their lives, or maybe through high school for a few years, and showing up as a high school junior, coming in and having some of the language barriers that were there, trying to navigate a new culture, going from a warm climate to experiencing winter and snow and all these things for the first time. And I just remember finding myself lots of days or nights laying in bed just thinking, what am I doing here, right? Like, what am I doing with my life right now? And just really missing home, missing my family, missing the people that I had grown up with my whole life, missing my culture, missing our food, our music, and all these things about my life that I had grown up with for 16 years up to that point. As I went out later that year for the season, I was a basketball player as well, so went out for the season that year. I got to meet one of the assistant coaches whose name was Scott, and he was kind of assigned to me to help me learn the offense, the defense, and everything, and I'd never really played organized basketball in that way before. So his assignment was to work with me and teach this kid our way of playing basketball. There was just a mutual bond that formed in that. There was just something that was different about Scott that communicated that he understood a lot of these things, and that he was willing to listen, and that he was willing to lean in and really help me navigate some of these challenges that I was facing. He was patient, and you could just tell that he had a heart for really helping me understand not just the game of basketball as we were learning that, but he really had a heart for helping me navigate the significant move that I just made. And so I remember when the school talked to me towards the end of that school year about moving families, because I was with another host family at the time, and I just remember thinking, man, this is more change. I just came here one school year in a family, and then now they're gonna move me again. And I just found myself so unsettled at the time, and it just created this anxiety not knowing who this new family was gonna be, and the family that I was in at the time, things were going okay. It wasn't necessarily the best situation for me either, but it was at least some comfort that it provided for me. Finding out that there was gonna be more change in my life just really caused a lot of anxiety and unsettled me a lot. But then I remember when they finally told me that, hey, actually it's gonna be the Nichols family because Scott and Vicky and their family would love to have you be a part of their family. I just remember this sense of joy and excitement that I felt like, man, this is like the best case possible of what could have happened. When I was finally chosen and brought into Scott and his family into their home, just feeling that sense of, man, I have a family here now that loves me, that cares about me, that's willing to sit down with me and talk through some of these things that I was going through. And there was just something different about them inviting me into their home, which it felt like it was more than just opening up a room to give me a place to stay, but really they were saying, hey, you're one of us now. I will never forget just that feeling of saying, man, this is what it feels like to be chosen, to be adopted and welcomed into a family. Someone was willing to look at me and see a 16-year-old boy who came from Africa, kind of lost, a little bit in life at the time, trying to figure out what is this new culture, this new environment I'm in, what am I doing with my life? And that somebody was willing to look at me as I was and to say, I choose you to be a part of my family, and you are one of us now. Being chosen to me really has helped to set the groundwork for my relationship with God. God has done that for every single one of us, that He has adopted us into His family through what Jesus did for us.
Have you ever given much thought to the power of words? For all of time, words have molded, shaped, and defined the future and the past. Words can change people's lives, build empires, shape the future, bring justice, draw people close to one another, mend brokenness. Words are powerful in how they have an effect on the world around us. Take dog sledding, for example. Dog sledding, also called dog mushing, is an old practice, common in Arctic climates. People will use a team of dogs pulling a sled to navigate through ice and snow for both sport and practical transportation. You might have seen it on TV or even movies like Togo or 8 Below. Dog sledding is unique and challenging because every single dog on the team is trained to do the exact same thing using just one-word commands. Words like hike, gee, haw, easy, straight, and whoa don't mean much to us, but they are essential to the dogs pulling the sled. These words signal for the dogs to go faster, turn right, turn left, slow down, go straight, stop, and more. For these dogs, a simple one-word command gives instruction on their direction, pace, and the desired outcome. Imagine how easy life would be if it was as simple as one command at a time. One word at a time that gives direction and purpose for our lives. Think of how many words you heard today alone that changed your mood, altered your plans, or caused you to think about someone or something in a completely different way. Words have power, and today I believe that Jesus has one for you, a command that He wants you to focus the rest of your life on. It's just one command, but it isn't that simple. In the book of John, chapter 15, Jesus is talking to His disciples when He says these words, "My command is this, love each other." This is Jesus' command for you and I today. One word, love. I know it sounds simple, maybe even cheesy to hear it said out loud. Love can look a million different ways. Love can be experienced differently by every single person on the planet. We have books and movies and songs, even certified experts on love. If you go on Google and search how to love, you can find exactly 9.07 billion search results from people ready to give you foolproof advice or their testimony on the power of love. How hard could it be to follow one command from God when we have research, knowledge, tips, and tricks at our fingertips? If that's the case, if everything we could ever need to follow this command of God is right in front of us, my question would be this: how come some of us aren't doing it well? I would argue that some people, maybe even you, are not living a life that seeks to love in the way that God has commanded us to. Why? Even with all of the resources in the world, this command is not simple. The call from God to love is short, but not easy. Take this scripture as an example. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8. Imagine with me for a moment. This passage is not describing what love could look like at any given moment. This passage is describing what love should look like all the time. Love never gives up. Love cares for others more than yourself. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't boast. Love doesn't force itself on others. Love isn't me first. Love doesn't fly off the handle. Love doesn't keep score of the sins of others. Love takes pleasure in the truth. Love trusts God always. Love always looks for the best. Love never looks back. Love is eternal. Love is complex and dynamic because it is all of these things every time, all the time. Love is about the posture of your heart. It is about the things you give and display to others. Love is about the way you reflect Jesus and love those who are far from Him. Love is not just a simple command from God. Love is one word with hundreds of meanings that look thousands of different ways. Love is not just a word, it is a characteristic of God reflected upon us and lived out in our lives. Does this feel impossible yet? Does this one command from God, this one word, feel like a big ask yet? So how? How do we love each other in the way that Jesus has commanded us? Well, Jesus tells us in John chapter 15, verses 12 through 13. He says this, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." This is where Jesus flips the script. We move from love is asking you to be everything to everyone at all times, to love is asking you to lay down your life just as Jesus did. The love that God calls us to is a love that sacrifices, a love that is willing to give something of value for the sake of someone else. Love as God designed it in this command is to love each other as Jesus has loved us. Maybe you have heard the story. Maybe you've experienced the love of God in your life. Maybe you've heard about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But have you ever used it as your model for how you should love someone else? God the Father loved you and I so much that He sent His only Son to die on a cross for every sin that you've ever committed. God saw that we were helpless and trapped and headed down a road that leads to death. So He intervened. Jesus Christ cried tears of blood the night before He went to the cross because He didn't want to die. But He remembered you and He remembered me. So He went. They put nails in His hands and His feet. They beat Him and mocked Him and raised Him up on a wooden cross. He died in front of all of His peers, His followers, those He loved. He breathed His last breath for no reason other than He loved you. Jesus died out of love so that you could experience the love of the Father. Do I think this command from God calls us to die on a cross the exact way that Jesus did? No. Absolutely not. This passage is simplifying the idea of love for us so that it's tangible. What is the love that God calls us to? A love that sacrifices something of value for the sake of someone else. Forget all the things that love is. Forget the billions of articles on how to love and all of the things that love is or is not. This is what matters. Love is giving something of value in the way that God gave something of value to you. Today, that is God's command for you. Give your life, give everything you have, give everything of value to love people in a way that makes them feel loved by God. John 15 goes on to say this, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last." John chapter 15, verse 16. You have been chosen to love. If you're thinking to yourself, man, this is a great passage for this person or that person, you know who really needs to learn how to love? My sister, my brother, my wife, my husband, my neighbor, my kids, my boss, that kid that won't stop bullying me at school, that person from my past, or whoever else that comes to mind. Let me stop you right there. This is a message God has chosen for you to hear. This is a command God has chosen you to follow. God says in this passage, I chose you. I picked you specifically. I appointed you. I anointed you. I have placed a call on your life, on your ministry, on your family to be living proof of my love in the world. Not to hold open the door for a random stranger once a day or say a quick prayer for that person you saw ask for prayers on Facebook, but to live a life of sacrificial love that gives something of value, not just convenience, but value for the sake of someone else. It's not a simple commandment, it's a powerful word. It's a mission you can dedicate your life to, love. He chose you to love. I think today we need to answer two essential questions in response to God's command for us to love one another. Who is God calling me to love? And what does it look like for me to love them? When God says love each other, who comes to mind? Who in your life needs an extra measure of the love of God through you? I think it's important that we get specific when answering this question. You see, Jesus had a purpose when God called him to love the world. Jesus knew that the person he died to love was you and me. It was the reminder of you and me that led him to the cross when he was crying out for a different option. It was the reminder of who it was for. Loving everyone is actually a lot easier to give up on compared to loving one person whose name God has placed on your heart. It's when you feel like giving up or giving in to selfishness that God will remind you of that person he has called you to love. God chose you to love. Who is he laying on your heart to love right now? First, who is God calling me to love? Second, what does it look like to love them? If we define love as giving something of value for the sake of someone else, what is God calling you to give? I would challenge you to pick one of these. First, maybe God is calling you to give your time to love someone else. We would all rather be doing something that we want to with our day off, but maybe the person in your life that God is calling you to love needs to experience the love of God that comes from time spent together. Second, God could be calling you to use your talents to love someone. We all have gifts and skills and abilities that God has given us. What would it look like for you to use your talent to show love to someone who isn't talented in the same way? Finally, maybe God is calling you to give your treasure. What do you possess? What resource do you have that could be a means for you to love someone else? Maybe it's money, a vacant room in your home, an old car that you debated on selling, the savings you had set aside for that big ticket item. Maybe loving someone looks like giving the value of some of your treasures. Time, talent, and treasure. Giving something of value in the way that Jesus gave something of value, all for the sake of loving us. You were chosen to love. God appointed you to love. How are you going to live out this command?
Man, what a great word from Patrice. She says the love that God calls us to is a love that sacrifices.
Yeah, it's so good and so true. And this week, we really want to walk through this idea as a group. So as you're getting into your discussion guides and group challenges, there's some work to do.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to say that we're going to take action or that we're going to love people well this week. And we always have really great intentions, but it's always easy to forget and to get busy and to miss your opportunities.
That's so true. But hey, before we have you discuss as a group, we want to make sure everyone is ready to connect with the Matthew 25 challenge. In addition to what you already have in your guide, if you'll text Northview to 56170, you'll also get some cool resources, including a comprehensive guide for the whole family when you send back your email. And one more thing, and this isn't in your discussion guide, before you start your group discussion, start out your time together by having someone read Matthew chapter 25, verses 35 through 40 out loud.
Yeah, so have a great conversation and be sure to catch a service this weekend. You definitely aren't going to want to miss what's happening, and we'll see you next week.